In the year 1778, two upper-class Irish women escaped their homes and families, fleeing to a small town in Wales. There, the women lived as a couple and remained secluded in the beautiful village for over 50 years, scandalizing but also fascinating their contemporaries. Join me as we explore their story. Eleanor Charlotte Butler came from one of the most honoured families in Ireland. The Butlers had conquered extensive territories in the Irish Midlands in the late 12th and 13th centuries, an estate which allowed subsequent members of the family to become the Earls of Ormond, one of the country's most senior aristocratic lineages. It was into this affluent background that Eleanor was born on the 11th of May 1739 in Kilkenny Castle. She was the third of 4 children born to Walter Butler and Ellen Morris. Her father was the de jure 16th Earl of Ormond, though he did not ever officially acquire this title owing to an inheritance crisis. As a young woman, Eleanor was sent to France to be educated at a convent, as the Butlers had extensive connections on the continent amongst the Catholic powers from when the family had been temporarily exiled in the 17th century. There she became an avaricious reader and extremely well educated, but she saw little of her family, and as she grew up they viewed her as a bookworm with few social skills. In any case, Eleanor became highly independent, and when she returned to Ireland in the late 1750s, she refused to be placed into an arranged marriage. Sarah Ponsonby came from a more modest but nevertheless a still powerful and wealthy family in the Irish Midlands. She was born in Ireland in 1755 to Louisa Lyons, an upper-class woman, and her husband Chambre Brabazon Ponsonby, a member of the Irish Parliament for Newtownards. Sarah was the only child of his second marriage, but sadly Louisa, Sarah's mother, died just 3 years after her birth. Chambre remarried before long, taking Mary Barker, daughter of Sir William Barker, 3rd Baronet of Kilcooley Abbey, as his third wife. With Mary, Chambre would go on to have another girl named Mary after her mother, but he would pass away early in 1762, aged about 41, when Sarah was just 6 years old, and while his third wife was pregnant with his unborn son. This child was born 4 months after his passing, and was named Chambre Brabazon after his father. Accordingly, Sarah became an orphan and was sent to live with some relatives in Kilkenny. Here she grew up in the same social circle as Eleanor, who lived some 25 kilometres away, though she was 16 years younger than her. They first met in 1768, when Sarah was 13 and Eleanor 29, as Sarah had been sent to Kilkenny Castle to further her education under Eleanor's tutelage. As Sarah grew older, the two developed a close friendship, which continued throughout Sarah's education. Once she turned 18 and completed her studies, Sarah returned home, but the pair stayed in touch and remained close friends. By the mid-1770s, Eleanor and Sarah were very close, and in a relationship with each other, albeit a clandestine one, given that society was completely unaccepting of homosexuality in the 18th century. Yet, as hidden as their relationship might have been, their unwillingness to marry was beginning to cause trouble for both women. By then, Eleanor was well into her 30s, and many within her family had largely given up on her ever marrying. But Sarah was of an age that she was under increased pressure to do so and start a family. Moreover, her position as an orphan left her particularly vulnerable in this respect. There were also murmurs amongst Eleanor's family members that since she had not married and would not have children, that she should be sent to a convent. It was as a consequence of these pressures that the couple began formulating plans to elope from the Irish Midlands and start a life together somewhere else. Eleanor and Sarah made a first effort to escape from Kilkenny on the night of the 30th of March 1778. The pair dressed as men and armed themselves before heading for Waterford, where they hoped to catch a boat to Britain. Yet, their plan was discovered when they were found hiding near Waterford dock. According to some, Sarah's dog gave them away, as they had taken it with them and it wouldn't stop barking. Following this, their families tried to make them abandon their plans, but it was no use, as the pair had made up their minds. 2 months later, the women tried again, and this time they were successful, eloping across the Irish Sea to Wales. After arriving in Milford Haven, the pair began a picturesque tour of the Welsh countryside, before deciding to settle in North Wales. Eventually, they managed to secure the tenancy of a charming cottage on the outskirts of the village of Llangollen, and in 1780 they purchased the property. This they named Plas Newydd, a Cymric term meaning new hall or new mansion. It would become their home for the next half a century, and they would soon become many celebrities in Wales and England. Eleanor and Sarah gradually began renovating Plas Newydd, following their decision to settle here in the late 1770s. It was originally a 5-bedroom cottage, large by the standards of the region and time, but not unusual in its architectural features. However, over the years the pair altered the facades and features of the building to turn it into a Gothic-style cottage which certainly stood out in the Welsh countryside. The most striking aspect of this were arched window features and panes, which made the front of the cottage look more like the facade of a medieval Gothic cathedral than a Welsh household. They even managed to acquire the medieval high cross, which had stood at the top of Chester Cathedral for centuries, but which had been torn down during the English Civil War as the Puritans reacted against Roman Catholic beliefs. This they set up anew at their home. Formal gardens were also laid out around the cottage, and inside elaborate oak panelling decorated many of the rooms. The nature of Eleanor and Sarah's relationship has been widely speculated on over the decades. Historians have wondered if they were in fact lesbians, or if they were just two unusually close women who found solace in each other's company and their decision to reject marriage and the social constraints of the time. Yet there seems little doubt that they were lovers in some sense. Eleanor's extensive diary survived today, and in these she repeatedly refers to Sarah as "my beloved," while we also might speculate that their ironic decision to name a succession of pet dogs as Sappho as fairly concrete evidence of the women's sexuality. Sappho was a famous ancient Greek poetess whose professed love for women is the origin of the term lesbian, having hailed from the island of Lesbos in Greece. Despite the general rejection of homosexual relationships at the time, the women do not appear to have faced any persecution owing to their relationship. If they had been two men living together with rumours of a sexual relationship, the situation would have been different, as gay relationships were actively suppressed under Britain's sodomy laws until well into the 20th century. The two women led a relaxed cerebral life here. They had enough money to hire some household staff, including Mary Carroll, a colourful character who was part of Sarah's household staff back in Ireland, and she would remain a faithful servant and friend for the rest of her life. This left the women free to engage in renovating the cottage and other pursuits. For instance, we have the following entry from Eleanor's diary under the 22nd of September 1785. Up at 7, dark morning, all the mountains enveloped in mist, thick rain, a fire in the library, delightfully comfortable, breakfasted at 8:30. From 9 till 1 writing, my beloved drawing Pembroke Castle. From 1 to 3 read to her. After dinner went hastily round the gardens. Rained without interruption the entire day. From 4 till 10 reading to Mai, she drawing. From 10 to 11 sat over the fire conversing with my beloved. A silent, happy day. There are many other entries which describe days spent largely reading, writing and drawing, proving that the couple were happy to live a quiet, secluded life. Curiously enough, despite their elopement from Ireland, the pair managed to maintain a relationship with their families back home after a period of initial estrangement. Llangollen lay along one of the main routes that travellers between Dublin and London might take if they crossed directly over to North Wales and then travelled across the country into England. There is evidence that family members and relatives visited them frequently at Llangollen. Evidently both families found the new dispensation acceptable as long as Eleanor and Sarah were not physically present in Ireland. Over the years, Eleanor and Sarah gradually became quite famous across Britain. At first their home attracted attention owing to the Gothic architecture in this remote Welsh cottage. They opened their home to those who wished to visit and view the unusual domicile. As they did so, information concerning the women's peculiar relationship spread, and eventually they began to receive calls from some of the most celebrated individuals of late 18th and early 19th century Britain. These included Sir Walter Scott, the author of Ivanhoe, the poets Percy Shelley and Lord Byron, and even the hero of the Napoleonic Wars, Arthur Wellesley, 1st Duke of Wellington. Other notable visitors included Charles Darwin and his father, Prince Hermann von Puckler-Muskau, a German nobleman and landscape designer, and many others. It's said that even Queen Charlotte wanted to see their cottage and persuaded King George III to grant them a pension. Yet, perhaps the most famous of visitors to the home of the ladies of Llangollen was William Wordsworth. He subsequently honoured them through the composition of the poem To the Lady E.B. and the On Miss P. This was not the only literary immortalisation of the women. Anna Seward also wrote about them in her poem Llangollen Vale, composed in 1796, while The Chase of the Wild Goose, a pioneering novel by the physician Mary Gordon, published through the patronage of Virginia Woolf in 1936, also discussed the ladies of Llangollen and their relationship. Eleanor and Sarah continued to live throughout the years in much the same way as they had for a long time, though their situation did take a sad turn in 1809 when their lifelong companion Mary Carroll passed away. In their later years, they both wore black riding habits and men's top hats, which was viewed as eccentric and outdated by many, but the clothing was practical for outdoor activities. They also refused to have their portraits taken, and the only reason we reliably know what they looked like was thanks to some quick secret sketches that were made while others distracted them. The ladies were often short of money, though they had many generous neighbours and benefactors who kept them afloat. Anne Lister, an English landowner of Halifax, known for her extensive personal diaries, recorded visiting them in 1822 and being impressed by the way Sarah Ponsonby carried herself, though by that time Eleanor was very old, and Anne doesn't note meeting her when she called to Llangollen. Perhaps she was bedbound by that time. There is also speculation that Anne, who has been dubbed the first modern lesbian, was inspired by their relationship to informally marry her own lover. In the end, despite their significant age difference, Eleanor and Sarah died within a short period of each other. Eleanor survived until her 90th year, dying of general old age on the 2nd of June 1829. Sarah lived on at Plasnowid for just over 2 years thereafter, passing away on the 9th of December 1831 at 76 years of age. They were buried together on the same plot at St. Colin's Church in Llangollen. Also buried here is Mary, because after her death the pair had erected a 3-sided monument which would serve as a final resting place for the three of them after so many happy years together. Plasnowid passed into new ownership, with General John Yorke, a British commander and veteran of the Crimean War of the 1850s, residing there for a time. In 1932, the house came into the possession of the Llangollen Urban District Council. Today, it has been turned into a museum, both on account of its unusual design features and the story of the two women who lived there in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Thank you so much everyone for watching this video on the ladies of Llangollen. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you thought of their lives down below in the comments, and if you have any other suggestions, also be sure to leave them down below in the comments. I hope you guys are subscribed and the notifications turned on so you get all my videos as soon as I upload them. Anyway, that's all from me, so I'll see all of you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks.